wait for the 2 or 3 minutes to join the participant.
Yeah, people are joining now.
Just to say, Dr. Nurul, I'm getting a signal that my internet is unstable. So if you are able to work with the video recording, that would be good for the presentation if possible.
Yes, I'm working with my colleagues to share the.
Lovely.
Sir, I think we should start.
Okay, let's people come in. In the meantime, we will start. Now, yeta kilo, Vinata.
So that will be video sharing later. First,
So,
Hamid, sir.
Dr. Hamid will go first. Okay. In the meantime, okay, no problem. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our weekly webinar on COVID-19, organized by One Health Bangladesh in partnership with Global Health Development. As you all know, this is our 8th webinar of this series, and today's topic is impact of COVID-19 on food and nutrition security, call for action. We are very privileged that we have three very distinguished speakers today with us. We have Dr. Tahmid Ahmed, who is the Senior Director of ICDRB, International Center for Diarrheal Disease Research. He is head of the Division of Nutrition and Clinical Services, Maternal and Childhood Malnutrition, and Clinical Services, yes. And you all know, but particularly those who are in Bangladesh One Health community, he is one of our very favorite speakers, particularly when we think about nutrition and food security. And he is one of our very strong voices in our One Health community. Dr. Hamid, we are very grateful that you have been able to make some time to come here. We will have a second speaker here, Professor Robin Elders. She is a Senior Consulting Fellow, Center for Universal Health, Chatham House, London, and as a Honorary Professor, Development Policy Center, Boston National University. He has been linked with Bangladesh as well, and he used to come for our policy dialogue in collaboration with Chatham House. In our last One Health conference, she was the key person in organizing and moderating and speaking on our food security topics. Robin, a very warm welcome to you. I know it is a bit late for you in your part of the world, but our people will be truly enlightened with your presentation and discussion. Welcome to our 9th webinar. And we have another colleague from Chittagong Veterinary University, and Professor Ahsanul Haq, who has done some recent work. How is it, the COVID-19, how is it impacting on food production, particularly in the livestock sector, in specific in the poultry sector? And we have invited him to share the findings of that results. Professor Ahsanul Haq, I can't see you, but most welcome to our 9th webinar. Before we go for to the speakers for speaking on this occasion, I will go for some housekeeping announcement. As you all know, this is a webinar which will be recorded and then uploaded in our One Health website. All participants can put their question in the question and answer button you'll see in the screen bottom. And we'll try to answer your question as much as possible. It will be a session more than an hour. We have 3 speakers. Maybe normally we'll go for an hour. When we have 2 speakers, in this particular case, we might go for 1 and 15 to 1.5 hour session. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending this webinar, and a warm welcome to all of you. Now I'll ask our speaker, Dr. Hamid, to go for his presentation. Dr. Hamid, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nitish Debnath. It's indeed a pleasure for me to be here. And as I said, that this is my first webinar. And audience, I can't see you, but I'm looking at the screen for some remarks. So I'm delighted that you are here to listen to the 3 speakers. Apart from me, I'm just a learner, but I'm extremely delighted that we have Dr. Elders as well as Professor Ahsanul Haq. So let me share my slides with you. Okay. I hope that you can see the slides. So Dr. Debnath asked me to talk about food security as we see it and as we feel it during COVID-19, particularly in Bangladesh. So my focus today would be on food insecurity and in Bangladesh. I will not be talking about what is happening in other parts of the world. And as you know, that because of the general holiday, also known as lockdown, in this part of the geography, as well as in other parts of the world, people have been affected. There is no work, no pay. Daily wagers have been worst affected. And I don't have to remind you that, how dire the situation is. And you can see on this slide a photograph that I borrowed from Al Jazeera, and this is from Bangladesh, from a slum where a rickshaw puller, a very unfortunate gentleman, is shown with family members, and he's without any work because he can't bring his rickshaw on the streets of Dhaka city. And therefore, he goes without any wages and to some extent without any food. Businesses remain shut down, shops, eating houses, they are closed, and then household helps. Many of us, we employ, we engage household helps, we have drivers, we have other staff. They have been asked to leave, and in return, many of them do not even get the pay that they are supposed to get. And then we have seen layoffs happening in many parts of the society. And again, in the thick of the general holiday or lockdown, what you see here in this slide is again something, we have commonly encountered. People in the streets, people lining up for relief, people queuing up for alms, and whenever you go out, people will come to you and ask for something. This is what I'm talking about, people who are in dire circumstances, suffering from poverty due to COVID-19, as well as food insecurity. Therefore, we thought that understanding the food insecurity status and the coping strategies is critical for formulating appropriate policy and for designing effective programs to mitigate the food insecurity, particularly the extreme food insecurity that we have been witnessing. So what we did during this COVID period, during the lockdown, is to do a study. And the objective of this study was to assess the extent and to identify the determinants of food insecurity and the coping strategies in urban and rural households of Bangladesh during the month-long COVID-19 lockdown period. So this was a study that was piggybacked on another study that we were doing in Dhaka as well as in rural Matlab to look at the extent as well as the determinants of vitamin D deficiency among children in these areas. And this study is known as the Sunshine Study. And this study is led by my colleague Shubhashish Das. So in essence, this was a cross-sectional study which was conducted among the household food using the household food insecurity access scale questionnaire. And very soon, I'm going to talk to you about what this household insecurity access scale questionnaire means and what does it entail. We collected the data and I'll also tell you how we did that. And we used multinomial logistic regression analysis to identify the determinants of the household food insecurity and coping strategies. Where did we do this study? In two areas, as I said, in one of the slums in Mirpur area of Dhaka called Bauniabad, and the other was in Matlab in Chandpur district, a rural part of Bangladesh. So we had 106 urban and 106 rural households, and these 106 in each domain were selected on the basis of a calculated sample size. And the basis for this, the assumption was that 50% of the households we assumed to be suffering from severe food insecurity due to COVID-19. So what is the household food insecurity access scale? This is a scale that determines food insecurity based on lack of access due to poverty. This does not take into account the elements of food availability or utilization. So it calculates household food insecurity using 9 basic questions. And these questions include worrying about food, unable to eat preferred foods, eating just a few kinds of food, eating foods that people usually do not want to eat, eating a smaller meal, eating fewer meals a day, and no food of any kind in the household, or going to bed hungry, or to go a whole day and night without eating whatsoever. So based on the responses to these 9 questions, we then classified the households in urban Dhaka as well as rural Matlab as food secure, mildly food insecure, moderately food insecure, and severely food insecure households. So we know that the government of Bangladesh imposed a restriction of movement on 25th March. So we started to collect the data exactly on 26th April, about a month following the onset of the lockdown or the general holiday. And then the data was collected for the previous 4 weeks on household food insecurity from more than 200 female adults over telephone using the household food insecurity access scale. Why over telephone? Because I mentioned that this was part of a longer study that we had been doing, and there was a good deal of rapport between the study investigators, the study staff, as well as the household heads and other members of the households. Let me now go to the results straight away. Here you can see the slide that tells you about the prevalence of household food insecurity in urban and rural areas of Bangladesh during the lockdown period. So there are 3 panels that you see. On the extreme right is the overall panel depicting the situation combined for both rural as well as urban households. And you can see that only 11% of the households were food secure, which means that 90% of all households in the 2 domains were having some form of food insecurity, be it mild, moderate, or severe. If you look at the middle panel, which is rural matlab, you will see that about 70% of the households had moderate food insecurity, and 15% of the households suffered from severe food insecurity. Compared to rural matlab, what happened in Dhaka was even severe. 50% of the households had moderate food insecurity, but if you can look carefully, the purple bars, 42% of the households suffered from severe food insecurity. So this is something that we saw quite frequently in Dhaka city as well as in other cities of Bangladesh. So how do people cope with the food insecurity? So here in this slide, you can see the different coping mechanisms and segregated by the domain, urban and rural. So you can see that 65% of all households, they actually borrowed money, while 38%, close to 48%, they had to borrow food from other households. 14% they actually sold their assets, whatever they had, cattle or other household items. About 60% they consumed fewer items, or they changed their food habit, altogether. Consuming foods that were available or were inexpensive. And 13% they actually ate other than the staple food. And you can see the difference between the green and the maroon bars, implying that there was some difference between the urban and rural households in terms of coping strategies against food insecurity. So this was what we found. The essence is that food insecurity was pretty common during the lockdown period, and this will have implications during the entire period of COVID-19 as well as thereafter. And I'm going to touch down upon that very soon. So what has been done countrywide as means of mitigation against extreme food insecurity? In this slide, I've tried to summarize the different ways and means to tackle extreme food insecurity. We saw a substantial degree of local philanthropy occurring both in Dhaka city as well as in other parts of the country. People, they simply came forward. The NGOs, they came forward. They came with rural kitchens. They came with packages of food to be distributed to the people who are in need. Since this was also the time when we had the Eid, the Islamic festival of Eid, before which most of the Muslims, they actually distribute their Islamic charity called zakat. We found that many people were actually distributing zakat among the people who were, food insecure or poor. We also saw that the army and the police, they're making, substantial efforts on distribution of relief, both in Dhaka city as well as throughout the country, and also in vulnerable areas such as the Chittagong hill tracts. The government encouraged, the sale of essential food commodities at subsidized prices, and this is what is known as the open market sale. There was a very interesting and a very successful mechanism of overcoming the challenge of food insecurity, which is through the early harvesting of boro, which happens to be the major staple in Bangladesh. And I will detail this in a moment. And then we found about the Prime Minister's initiative, a huge and very successful initiative of cash transfer for 5 million extremely poor households. And through this cash transfer, each extremely poor household was provided with a cash of $30 US, the equivalent of that in Bangladesh taka. So as I was saying about the very innovative way of saving the crops in the Haur areas, let me touch down through a couple of slides. Okay, we know that in Bangladesh there are 3 main paddy crops: the boro, the aush, and the almond. And the boro happens to occupy 55% of the total rice of the paddy production in Bangladesh. Therefore, it's very important to save the country from the scourges of food insecurity. What happened during this lockdown was that there were alarms, there were forecasts of the flash floods coming in the higher areas, which in fact, tend to occur, found in 7 districts of Bangladesh: Kishoreganj, Netrokona, Sunamganj, Moliwazar, Hobiganj, Sylhet, and Brahmanbaria. And these areas, the higher or the low-lying areas of these districts, they produce more than 20% of the 20 million tons of boro paddy in the field. So a substantial amount of rice. So if the rice, the paddy would have gone as a result of the flash floods, the country would have been in the grips of food insecurity. But then there was a very clever ploy employed by the government of Bangladesh, in particular by the Ministry of Agriculture. Immediate actions taken by the ministry. There was a facilitation of safe transport of seasonal workers from different parts of the country to travel to higher areas for harvesting the paddy. The ministry also provided reapers and harvesters, all mechanical means of rapidly harvesting the paddy to the fields. And as a result of this, we saw more than 250,000 farm laborers, and I'm talking about the seasonal laborers. They joined the forces from different parts of the country to go to these higher areas for harvesting the boro paddy. As a result of that, I would say that the country was saved from the boro harvest from the flash floods. Fortunately, the flash floods didn't occur. So far I've told about the burden of food insecurity that we found out from our own study. And I also told you about the mitigation mechanisms taken all over the country. Last few slides, I'm going to talk about the impact on nutritional status. What does it mean? These are the results that we have, summarized from the different demographic and health surveys taking place in Bangladesh from 2004 to 2018. And you can see in the different panels the tremendous progress the country has made in terms of stunting, in terms of underweight, and in terms of wasting for under 5 children. But the problem is, if the food insecurity due to COVID continues, then we are going to have a dent in the in the tremendous progress that we have made in terms of child nutritional status. In May, in the last week of May, we saw a very interesting and important paper published in Lancet Global Health. In this study, what they did was to classify areas into 3 groups, and this was based upon the intensity of scaling up, interventions for child health and nutrition. So mild, moderate, and severe, corresponding to good, worse, and worst outcomes. Based on this modeling, what they predicted was that COVID-19 would result in food insecurity. Food insecurity would result in wasting of children, and this wasting, as a result of COVID-19 associated food insecurity, would account for 18 to 23% of additional child deaths. So you can see a huge implication of food insecurity, of subsequent malnutrition, and child mortality all over the world. And this is because of COVID-19. So what are the conclusions then? Firstly, moderate to severe food insecurity is rampant in both urban and rural households during the month-long lockdown period in Bangladesh. And we think that if the COVID-19 is going to persist, then the impacts of food insecurity are also going to take a toll. We have found that poorer households with a larger family size and a household head who has a lower years of education were the most vulnerable to suffer from food insecurity. Therefore, Any food relief or financial support should be allocated to the households with the above mentioned characteristics. And finally, we have to depend upon vulnerability mapping, enforcement of lockdown, but with ensured provision of relief, which are key to address the acute food insecurity that we are witnessing as a result of COVID-19. Before I conclude, I would like to point out to the fact that the Bangladesh National Nutrition Council, under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, this has produced a very important document which goes by this title, Determining the Impact of COVID-19 on Nutrition, Projection of the Possible Malnutrition Burden in Post-COVID-19 Period in Bangladesh. This, to me, is a very important document, and those of you who are interested in learning further about food security in Bangladesh, this is a must read for you. Thank you very much for giving me the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tommy. It was an excellent presentation, so much of insights and also some of the future thoughts that we can think about. We will have a lot of questions you will have to answer, but before answering those questions now, I will switch over to our second speaker, Professor Robin Elders. I guess she is ready now with her presentation. Robin, may I ask
yes.
you to start, please?
Just to confirm, you want me to give my presentation rather than you're going to use, that's fabulous. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
I'm just wondering, I had recorded it with sound.
But we can hear you now. You can go ahead.
Okay, if the video is not working, maybe it's easier if I go back and show my screen. Sorry, technology is not on our side. Maybe it's better if you allow me to share my screen, and I'll try using my own screen, if that's okay. Well, I hope all of you can see this screen. I'd sent a video through earlier just in case my video, my internet connection was unstable. Anyway, thanks so much, and thanks to the organizers, One Health Bangladesh, for enabling me to participate in. I've been asked to speak and to give a global perspective on the impact of COVID-19 on food and nutrition security. A brief overview of what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to just review the situation of global food and nutrition security before COVID-19 began, and then to look at what is happening currently in terms of the public health crisis and its impact on food security, to discuss briefly about the various responses that are being proposed to deal with food insecurity that was so nicely presented about what you're facing in Bangladesh, that's being faced by other countries, and then to look forward, to think about how can we use the lessons that we're learning now to rebuild our food systems as we emerge from this COVID-19 crisis. So, global food and nutrition security before COVID-19. What we know is that our global food system was already fragile. These statistics that tell us that over 800 million people remain chronically short of food. Over the last 4 years, this number has increased. Globally, around 1 in 4 children are stunted and 1 in 3 women are anemic. These statistics are really quite tragic and reflect poorly on our global food system. We know through globalization that the supply chains of food have been increasing, that has worked well in some cases, but with COVID-19, that's been a challenge. We're aware that climate change is impacting food security with increasing temperatures and increasing frequency of extreme weather events, droughts, floods, cyclones. Food security has been and continues to be impacted. There are spillover events are becoming more frequent. When we talk about spillover, this is the transmission of pathogens from wildlife to humans. This is happening due to increasing numbers of intensive livestock units and habitat destruction, either for human dwellings or for the expansion of agricultural lands. And this is allowing novel pathogens from wildlife to come into contact with people, and this is the case with COVID-19. In terms of our ecosystems, we know that they're stressed. We're losing topsoil, our freshwater supplies are diminishing, and we have significant loss of biodiversity. All of this is reducing the resilience of our food systems. We have consolidation of food and agricultural supply chains, and with this decreasing number of actors in our supply chains also has an impact on the resilience of the system. Food and farm workers across the world tend to be amongst the lowest paid folk, and this is part of the inequity that means that they're also facing difficulties from this particular crisis, in addition to ongoing hardships. Importantly, trade gaps have increased over the countries, are increasingly becoming net importers of food. So that trade gap is widening, and it was predicted to increase significantly up to 2030, with many low-income countries becoming net importers of food. All of this has contributed to the current situation that we're facing with the COVID-19 pandemic, leading to huge suffering of people, of household vulnerability, of livelihood constraints, having an impact on the economics, as was so well described by Dr. Tamid, and also the huge food insecurity consequences that were documented. Just this week, the UN Secretary General, Mr. Guterres, has warned us that the world stands on the brink of a food crisis. He's warned us that it could be the worst that we've seen in at least the last 50 years, that around 265 million people are forecast to face acute food insecurity before the end of this year. We know that women and children are being disproportionately impacted by these food insecurity situations, and the UN is urging governments and all of us to act swiftly so that we can avoid disasters. How did COVID-19 tip the balance? As was so nicely presented in our first presentation, we could see the impact of labor shortages due to morbidity from illness, the movement restrictions due to some of the public health measures, and physical distancing measures that has reduced the efficiency of certain enterprises associated with food processing. In terms of supply chains, we've had movement restrictions impacting on transport. We've had problems of hoarding and the supply chain being unable to replace food that was bought in large quantities. And we've had border closures or increasing inspection at borders, increasing transit time that has greatly impacted the ability of food to be delivered as it's required to different places. So what are countries doing? What are governments doing to try and mitigate this impact of food insecurity? Globally and regionally, there's been clear agreement that it's important to focus on those who are being most affected in this immediate situation. countries that are facing fragile situations or who are conflict affected. There are countries that are affected by multiple crises. So in addition to COVID-19, a locust plague, fall armyworm, African swine fever, multiple challenges facing individual countries. Some countries are having significant currency depreciation, which is impacting their ability to import food to overcome any shortfall that they may have in their own domestic market, and aid programs that are targeting the most vulnerable, the poor, so that they are able to meet their food needs on a daily basis. At the national level, as in Bangladesh, many countries are working very hard to prioritize those food supply chains to make sure that key actors are designated as essential services so that they can continue to operate in the face of these public health restrictions. Governments not only have to deal with risk communication with regards to COVID-19, they're also dealing with risk communication that arise because of food myths that have appeared in relation or certain food products, such as broilers, chicken carcasses in certain countries. Demand has dropped considerably when consumers have linked COVID-19 with this particular food safety myth. Working very hard to strengthen social protection, looking after young children, pregnant and breastfeeding women and other vulnerable groups, and activities is how not to further disrupt markets for smallholders. We know that with subsidized food, with free food, that can be disruptive to markets and therefore impact on livelihoods of local and smallholder farmers. These are major issues. There's been a problem with food distribution in the past. They remain an issue with which we still have to grapple. In the medium term, so getting through this acute phase, it's really important to work to look at stability of prices for key commodities such as rice price, to stabilize that, to make sure that it's affordable by those that need it. Working at regional levels to strengthen supply networks for food, for trade, for agricultural inputs. This is going to be quite crucial. And working on those economic recovery packages that will support and enable food and nutrition security. At the national level, governments are very aware that the next planting season is coming up. So we not only had to harvest what was there now, COVID-19 continues to be with us. Farmers need to be able to plant for the next season. They're going to need seeds, they're going to need a range of agricultural inputs. Making sure that these products are available in a timely fashion is quite important. To look at options for harvesting and storage of the next harvest so that we are not wasting precious food. Looking at those supply chains to make sure that they keep functioning and that our cold chain is working well. And in addition to making sure that there's sufficient quantity of food, government's responsibility around food safety remains. So it's not only about supplying food, it's about assuring people that the safety of that food that is being supplied can be guaranteed. These are no small undertakings. So as we look forward to days when COVID-19 comes under control, it's really important that we not forget what we've learned, that we've seen the fragility of our food systems, and we want to be able to build back better. So what do we have to do to make this happen? It's really important that as countries seek to deliver economic recovery, that this be done in conjunction with supporting healthy and safe and environmentally sustainable food systems. That the new economic package also seek to be in line with countries' own key strategies. Countries have signed up to the Sustainable Development Goals. Countries have signed up to the Universal Health Coverage Declaration, which has a fabulous section on food security, looking at disaster risk reduction framework and how can we get these systems to align, to overlap, to be mutually supportive, to ensure that we are able to implement our commitments around the Convention on Biodiversity, getting farmers involved with this so that we don't lose any more crucial species. And with our own national development plans. In Bangladesh, you have an excellent example of your nutrition sensitive food systems. You have that there, how as you rebuild coming out of this COVID-19 pandemic, can those pillars of that program be supported and implemented as you move forward? As I mentioned, for those of you that came to the One Health Bangladesh conference, you will have seen this before, but there are key elements in food systems that we really need to think about to make sure that the food that's being delivered and consumed is healthy, safe, and can be sustainable. So healthy and safe soil and water, fair payment of workers, that we're producing the food that we need to meet the dietary needs of the population, and that farmers, fisher folk, that they're being paid a fair price. To make sure that we're maximizing locally produced products that are seasonably available, that are stored as required, to ensure that our labeling is accurate and that the prices are affordable, that people are consuming what they need according to their age, to their gender, their health and reproductive status. And this last one, if you can see it there, is waste. And when it comes to food, there should be no waste. It contains really essential nutrients. So working on composting and nutrient recycling, these are all economic opportunities to make sure that the nutrients are going back and are going to be part of our ongoing and sustainable food system. For those of you who have an interest, I've included some references here that you'll be able to follow up with. And I want to thank you so much for your time. I'd like to leave you with my vision for the future, and that is of an economic recovery that will deliver healthy, safe, and environmentally sustainable food systems. And I'd also like to put a plug in for the Global Hunger Index and Essay. It's going to be launched in October of this year. It's focusing on delivering zero hunger by 2030. That's the second development goal. We're all aware that this is a massive challenge. Together we need to achieve it, and we hope that you'll be able to visit that and contribute to the discussion around that index as it's released. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Robin. An excellent presentation, a lot of insight, global scenario, and also a lot of good future projection. Thank you so much. You have quite a good number of questions. I will come back to you. Now we'll go to our last presenter, Professor Ahsanul Haq. He will be focusing mostly on the livestock sector and some of the work he has already done during the COVID-19 situation. And that will be shared with all of you. Dr. Ahsanul Haq, please go ahead with your presentation.
It looks like disabled. I'm trying to, show my PowerPoint, but just a sec. Yeah, it looks. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, yes.
Well, hello everybody. I'm going to talk about the COVID impact on poultry production and distribution networks and the sector resilience in Bangladesh. Well, in Bangladesh, the general holiday started on 26th of March with some kind of flexibility to prevent human-to-human transmissions. And due to this, the poultry production and distribution networks have been severely disrupted. And these situations are causing a huge wastage of the poultry food products, leading to severe losses and uncertainty to the sectors.
I think we have lost him.
Is Rukon? Nurul? Hello, Nurul.
We lost the connection, Dr. Professor Nitish.
Okay.
I think we have lost him. Let me help him to reconnect. Sorry for the technical problem.
Call him over telephone and see if he can reconnect.
Yeah, he might have telephone. I just
His internet connection is lost, and I think we can continue on the question and answer session, and we will ask him to join.
okay. I think we can switch over to question and answer, but when he comes back, we may try to give him some opportunity to talk. Well, Dr. Tami, you have a question here just I'm coming up with. What were the other main inclusion criteria for recruiting participants in this cross-sectional study that you have undertaken? You have taken only urban and rural. What other criteria have you, included in this survey?
Yes, thank you. Actually, as I said, that this was a study which was done under the context of another study. In that study, we were looking at the vitamin D deficiency and how sunlight exposure, nutritional deficiency contributes to it. This was among under 5 children living in slum settlements in Dhaka or in villages of Matlab. They are not supposed to be acutely ill at the time of this study. They should not be suffering from the more severe florid cases of malnutrition, such as severe acute malnutrition. So basically, we are talking about under 5, apparently healthy and living in, under impoverished conditions, socioeconomic conditions.
Good, thank you. Professor Robin Elders, you have a question. How about we should identify countries with multiple crises and the tax on essential food should be lifted? Do you globally recommend this thing, particularly in poor countries?
remove taxes on food?
Yes.
I think certainly taxing food is not ideal at any time, really, particularly nutritious foods such as fruits, vegetables, high quality, nutritious, dense foods such as certain animal source food. We need to do what we can to make that food accessible to people. I don't know the situation for the different countries, but clearly ways for government to obtain revenue without having to tax food, because it will reduce their burden on their overall health budget. If people eat better, they're going to be healthier. So hopefully there would be a reduction on government spending due to improved health outcomes. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
No, I think that's a appropriate one. Dr. Tahmid, why is this said, that using sweet nutrients are worsening the COVID situation? Is there anything that you have said? Sweet nutrients.
And sweet nutrients
Are worsening the COVID situation.
This was not captured in my presentation, but and I think the questioner is alluding to what we call empty calories. You need to give a balanced diet to people to maintain good nutrition and health. But if we keep on giving everything which is sweet, then particularly to children, then this will give them just the empty calories with which you won't have any protein or fat to make a good balance with. I think this is what I got from the question.
And there is a supplementary question. Did you compare the accessibility of food with normal time, meaning before pandemic?
Yes. Yes. So this was difficult because this is a cross-sectional study, and we have to do it right when the holiday, the lockdown was being enforced. So we had to compare the results with historical data. So what we found was that in 2018, there's a publication on a study that was done on a nationwide scale, and that was on another program called Food Security and Nutritional Surveillance Project. So this is basically very impoverished households all over the country, and they found a food security insecurity of 56%. So 56% in 2018, and in our study we found a rate of 90%. This is a stark comparison. And then if we go beyond that, in 2011, we have the BDHS, the Bangladesh Demographic and Health Survey. And in that survey, they had a look at food insecurity in the country. And they found a rate of 36%. So you can see 36%, 56% among vulnerable households, and then we have, in the context of COVID-19, as high as 90%.
Okay, I can see Asanul Haq is there. Are you there now?
Yeah, sorry for that. I don't know. It's
okay. Can you go quickly with your presentation? We'll come back to the question again.
Okay, thank you. You can see my screen now?
I can see your screen. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry for troubling you. I mean, I was intended to discuss about the COVID impact on poultry production and distribution networks and the sector resilience in Bangladesh. Everybody, you know that the general holidays, we so-called lockdown, has started in our country from the 26th of March with the aim of preventing the human-to-human transmission. Due to these situations, our poultry production and distribution networks have been severely disrupted, which also cause huge wastage of food, the poultry food products, leading to severe losses and uncertainty to the sector. Many stakeholders have already fallen into debt and lost hope. Some are willing to quit livestock business, and some who want to continue might not be able to continue because of the lack of capital. Therefore, a huge number of population related to the poultry production distribution networks is going to be unemployed soon, which could crush the country's economic strength very badly. So considering the facts, we set some objectives to study. Number one is identify the range of impacts of COVID on the PDNs and explore potential solutions which can reduce the losses of sector and increase the system's resilience. So what we did, we conducted a literature search of electronic and print media reports between March and May, and performed a stockholders interviews along the PDNs, and also progressively monitored the stalls in live markets to assess price rate of birds and eggs with the traded volumes. So here is the the impact of the COVID on the poultry company, feed dealers, and the pharmaceutical company. You can see the 4 preventive measures taken during the lockdown situation that has impacted on our PDNs. Number one is social distancing and controlling movement, closure, shifting and rescheduling of the market, closures of hotel, restaurant and factories, less internal and overseas transport. So which adversely caused people, that to avoid or unable eating eggs, meats and other products. And the rumors in the social media against livestock regarding transmitting COVID infections also fuel this scenario. So what happens? This scenario, that leads to reduction of demand of birds and other products, and a lot of consequences happens afterwards. Decreased number of active farms, decreased demand of DOC, and decreased sales and demand of feed and medicine, etc. And the stakeholders got to cull a lot of DOC, and they have, many unused hatching eggs as well. So in case of, the poultry companies and the pharmaceutical companies, because of interrupted international transport system, there is a shortage of imported raw materials. And because of raw materials, it increases price inflation of raw materials and increased production cost. As a result, there is less feed and medicine production. Our stakeholders, they have to pay the salaries for their employee, have to pay rent, have to pay electricity bills, and have to pay interest and loan as well. So another actors is a feed dealer. Feed dealers has a lot of uncertainty because of getting credit money back from the credited farmers. So all those unprecedented acts causes, the huge economic loss on those, particular stakeholders. Here is the figures between, the pre-COVID period and the during early part of the COVID period. If you see in overall, all aspects, that during the COVID period, the price rate and production getting lower comparing with the pre-COVID season. So what measures, the stakeholders take to minimize losses? They lessen, the DOC production, supply DOC at lower price, selling hatching eggs to consumers to reduce loss, reducing production and strategic cost, stopping all extension plans, and they try to motivate farmers to restart the business. And the stakeholder also planning to apply for government incentive and loan. Here is the map of COVID impact on the farmers in different scales, and same preventive measures taken during the lockdown situation, plus, the rumors that causes people, avoid and unable eating eggs, meats and other products, and reduce the demand of the birds, eggs and other products. So even before the COVID starts, there is a high price of DOC and the high price of cost. These two together causes a high production cost. In addition to that, the seasonal effect of heat leads to the less production in the layers as well, and the high transport cost together causes huge problems on our farmers. And the farmer has to pay the salaries for their employees and pay electricity bills and the credit interest, etc., etc. the measures taken to minimize the losses, while the medium and large scale farmers take a kind of risk, restocking farmers with the DOC, targeting Eid festival. I mean, this strategy has been successful. The small farmers close their farms temporarily and watching the situation, whether the situation is going to be improved or not. Some layer farmers sell out the hens to minimize the loss and they reduce number of employees and employee salaries. Another, the scenario of, the COVID impact on the poultry traders, the same thing happened. I mean, the same preventive measures taken during the lockdown situation. These situations lead to reduction of demand of birds and other products. Therefore, there are many unsold birds and at a wholesale point and the retail stalls, and they have to, provide the extra food and extra cost of money here. And there are some, that many of the dead birds in the stall as well. So this kind of pressure put their business and making economics so difficult. In addition to that, the mobile vendors couldn't make any business because of the movement restrictions. So all the listed, the payments they got to pay to meet up, the salary, employee salaries, the pay, and the rent, and electricity bill, and so on. So the measures taken to minimize these sort of problems for our poultry traders, they supply poultry on credits to the stall holders. This is a kind of uncertain business for wholesalers, but they take risks. Reduce number of employees and employees' salary, and got to adjust livelihood cost. Now I'm going to show you, the unit price of live birds in different kinds at selected in the stalls and the markets across different parts of the country. We selected a part is a Chittagong metropolitan area and the Kustia. So if you see the price rate actually started to decline from the January and continue declining to the March, February, March, and even the half part of the April, and then getting up and increase gradually. Similar, the trend you can see in case of eggs, the declining started from January and continued until the first part of April and increased again throughout. There are, the defective measures taken during the COVID period and the promising announcement. First of all, is to open up the vet services during the general leave, and Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries support for early release of exported items from port, open up PRTC lab for feed, raw material testing, distributing, marketing eggs, poultry, etc. from muffle, encourage farmers by different means and dealings the remorse. And of course, the government stimulus good a lucrative amount of money at lower interest. So what are the possible scenarios according to stakeholder views and the media reports? A difficult recovery would be for the farmers that will take years to come back, and even the credit farmers are going to be disappeared in future probably. The layer farmers cannot stop cycles because so they are on the middle and they are looking for the further loss probably. And the country will suffer the protein shortage that will put pressure of the government to import the poultry products in future, which is not good for local producers. And there is a hope for quick recovery, but it depends on the consumers. If consumers realize that that the poultry meat and eggs are very important, that increase the boost of the immunity, body immunity, and can fight against the COVID, then probably the price of the poultry or poultry products will high and increase production, and industry regains full potential afterwards. So our views, according to our studies, we can say that all PDNs are impacted, but some are impacted more than others. Some will recover more rapidly than others. So there is an expected change in the structure of the Bangladeshi poultry sectors. If you compare the scale of impact of COVID on different the PDNs, we can say exotic broiler and Sonali PDNs are more commonly affected and badly affected, and same things with the small scale farmers and credit farmers. I would like to mention these things here, that exotic broiler PDN is very, very essential because it has a short production cycle and the rich protein, the sources, and affordable across the class of the peoples, and it depends on the farmer's livelihood and people's livelihood on this. So we need to ensure its safety from zoonotic disease and safety from antimicrobial resistance. Some suggestion we're proposing here: immediate release of government incentive to the farmers if would like to see the farmers get benefits. Implement interest-free or less interest loan scheme, interest waiver of the ongoing loan temporarily, and the remission of electricity bills, reduction of import tariff, relax all bureaucratic process like LC issue, drug authority, and the regulatory affairs. There are some policy issues I would like to touch on. The strategies on preventing rumors like coronavirus can spread through the poultry meat. I mean, these kind of rumors not only happening, these times, it happened before with the anthrax in 2009, 2010, and also antimicrobial residue in the milk, and then the ternary stuff in the poultry feed. So we're looking for in a robust, the unbiased group who can deal with these sort of things in future. Stringent strategy on distribution of poultry and poultry products during the situation like COVID. It is started these times, but we need the better, stringent strategy in future. Strategic phase out plans of livestock markets we can think of, but at the same time, we should think of, the poor people, those who are involved with livestock market business. Establish frozen meat, plant, and egg storage facilities in the field, along with digital marketing channels to improve supply chain. For this, I think
Have we lost him again?
He is still here, but
Okay. I think, but it's not too bad, he has come to the end, I think. Okay, I think we will move to now the question here. Thank you, Asamlog. You may not be able to hear me. Let's go to some question and answer. Robin, there is one question here. Entitlement is a big issue for food security. Unemployment rate is already on rise. How to bring the unemployed people, particularly local and those who are expatriate in the foreign countries, under safety network? How do you think globally, this is going to affect country like Bangladesh, maybe a similar country? What is your view about this particular question?
The question is relating to migrant workers. Is that the question?
Yes, migratory workers, as well as, there are a lot of works. Let's say, for example, in Bangladesh, we have a very strong garments factory. We are assuming that, garments factory will go down, and there will be a lot of unemployment, and they will be rushing to their village, and, there are a lot of pressure on this thing. How do you explain this?
It's a major issue in many countries. What we have known for decades now, that rural-urban migration has been taking place. As people go back to their villages, in many cases, those villages are not as they used to be. The available land may or may not be there, and the people going home, in some cases, need to learn how to farm again. Plus, they need that input supply for them to be able to start to farm again. So it is a very complex issue. To me, it's an indication of a global system that has not really worked very efficiently. It's been good for migrant workers when they were able to get remittances to send home, but the fragility of the system, as we lose those remittances, and then having communities to be able to support people that come back, that it's proving to be a great challenge in a number of those villages now in the short term. It may be, I love one of the questions that was talking about seeing agriculture revitalized. We may get there, But for that to happen, we have to be able to support those individuals who have gone back to be able to productively work land or to fish or whatever they have chosen. They need the supplies to be able to do that. And in many cases, the systems are still catching up with them. But going forward, it is very important to think about where people want to be based and how they can earn a sustainable living, and how both urban communities and rural communities can sustain themselves with nutritious, safe food. These are big questions, and we don't have all the answers yet, but country by country, these are things that you're going to have to wrestle with. So I haven't answered the question, but I've acknowledged the problem.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you. Dr. Tamis, very close to that one, there is one question. How can we really enable our farmers financially supporting more and investment opportunities as an incentive for healthy and nutritious food production? In other words, in securing the food to support the farmers. What is your view?
I think that is very important, because as much as we are suffering in our day-to-day lives, farmers are also suffering. And we have heard from Professor Ahsanul Haq the problem faced by those who are involved in poultry farming and poultry business. So I think the first thing would be for the government of Bangladesh, through the Ministry of Agriculture, to help support them in as much as it can be done. And I think in many ways it's happening. For instance, I gave the example of this pre-harvesting, which to me is a huge challenge taken by the country. And I think that's a unique example. And then we have, the government, making plans of purchasing the food grains at a relatively, a good price. We have seen in the past couple of years that farmers, they can't sell their produce. They are selling it at a throwaway price. We have seen that happen for milk. We have seen that happen for potatoes and for paddy. And now we have seen the government making a plan for purchasing that, from the farmers directly. I think this is a very good strategy. There should also be some advice and support from agricultural extension on how farmers can start producing other types of crop, not just paddy, but other crops that can contribute to our protein and fat nutrition. For example, we can talk about lentils, we can talk about pulses, we can talk about other healthy vegetables.
There was one question, but it was supplemented by Professor Ahsanul Haq, that Dr. Tamis has focused mostly on the plant food, but other side was ignored. But Rukon, I don't know whether Ahsanul Haq is here or not. Has he come back? No. There are quite a good number of questions there, that how really the labor market and food chain, all these things were there, but he is not there. Maybe I can ask both of you another question. What do you think about the budgeting, in the agriculture currently the government is formulating? Well, one is in Bangladesh, maybe globally. How do you think that budget on agriculture, food production, will it be changed in the context of the COVID-19 impact on food production? Dr. Tamis first, and then I will go to Dr. Robin.
I think I will give it to Dr. Elders first, and then if I can comment after her. Please.
Okay.
I would like to compliment my two panelists, Dr. Ahmed and Rukan, for their presentation. I think what you have documented during the pandemic pandemic crisis is really important. You need this data because we have a problem globally that government investment in agricultural research and development has declined. It's declined in most countries. In my own country, it's declined. And now we see this situation where without food, we're going to have crises, we're going to have much higher health associated morbidity. So I think collecting this data and then working with your health economists to use that universal health coverage declaration, which speaks about the importance of food security, to have our ministries of health also working with agriculture to advocate for an increase in a budget to be able to effectively work with those who are doing the farming, the fishing, and those who work along the value chain to get fresh, nutritious food to people. That's going to be good news for everyone. But back to your question, Nitish, agricultural budgets are unacceptably low across the globe.
Dr. Tamir, please.
After what Professor Elders has mentioned, I don't think I have anything to add, but just to tell you that, you know, in the backdrop of COVID-19, and after it will leave, if at all, then we will be left with a situation where we have to improve and increase the, you know, both the quantity as well as the quality of agricultural produce. Therefore, right at this moment, the government needs to plan for that, and that planning, of course, requires additional investment, additional, you know, budgeting for that, and at the same time, we have seen from Professor Ahsanul Haq's presentation that the demand for, you know, certain things has considerably dropped down. I think that also is a major factor to keep the agriculture sector, particularly poultry, as well as the horticulture sector vibrant. If you don't have a reasonable demand, then the price of the produce will never go, and the farmers will continue to suffer. Ultimately, it will be only the government who can help, and I have mentioned one of the mechanisms by it is helping purchasing food grains from the farmers directly. Again, this requires something as an additional, you know, budgetary involvement.
Right. This is a question to both of you. You know, do you think that we need to revise the agricultural policy with the international commitment, such as 2030 agenda for sustainable goal? You know, with the present situation, with the COVID, the target and all the indicators that we set forward for sustainable development, consumption, production. How realistic is that? Is it going to be as usual, or you have to revise this thing? Can you, I can start with Robin class, and then I come to Dr. Tamir.
So as I mentioned at the start of my presentation, even before COVID-19, most countries were not on track to meet their SDG 2 targets by 2030. So unfortunately, because of lack of investment or lack of focus on the importance of food security, many countries have been struggling. But do I think that we should push that out? Not necessarily. I think we have to hold to that 2030 date. We have to do the best we can, and then clearly we will be thinking about what we do after that, but we shouldn't stop now. We still have a decade, and we have, I believe, renewed interest and impetus to actually focus on achieving those key targets of it's zero hunger, it's sustainable agriculture, it's and that hunger focuses on key nutritional aspects as well as preserving your genetic resources. So it's not just about producing a quantity of food, but quality of food and a diverse range of foods. So they're good targets. I think we need to keep trying and to do our best and see where we get to by 2030. That's my opinion.
Yeah, thank you, Robin. Dr. Tami, please.
I cannot but agree with Professor Elders. We need to improve and increase the quality of food. It's not just going to be the quantity. And I can tell you one thing, that after COVID-19, the world of nutrition is not going to be the same. It's going to change, and so we'll have to change the strategies that we have to take for achieving the SDGs. The SDGs responsible for nutrition. For instance, if we consider childhood stunting, Bangladesh is one of the countries that is poised to achieve the target for stunting. But the dent that COVID-19 induced food insecurity is going to make, perhaps to rethink about our strategy. We have to, increase the momentum with which we are going to address the issue of stunting. This will require more thinking, more investment on both nutrition specific as well as nutrition sensitive interventions. And I completely agree with Robin Elders that, we'll have to think about more, nutritious food, particularly food of animal source origin for children, so that their growth is not impaired in the long run.
Yeah, there is one very critical question here. COVID-19 or pandemics, the history of pandemics says that, the most affected people are the most poor people, those who are, this is the story all over the pandemics, whatever pandemics we know so far. And do you see in this particular situation with the changing world, with more of science, more of communication, can we really convert this COVID-19 into an opportunity? This is a crisis. Is there any chance at all to change this into an opportunity? Can you make any comment? World crisis, what we see all black things, all worse things. Can you see any opportunity or not? To both of you, Robin, you can start.
I absolutely believe, I understand that for many people right now, this is a really tough time, and it may seem like it's the end of the world, but I do believe that it is an opportunity for agriculture and health to come together, to take a harmonized approach, to see that we need each other, and that in terms of national budgets and efficiency of utilization of national funds, if agriculture and health can work together well, then that will be the most efficient use of those funds. So I think it is a wonderful opportunity to think about how we view health and the role of food in contributing to health. And as I mentioned, the Universal Health Coverage Declaration does recognize that. And so I think it's taking that One Health approach, as you do so well in Bangladesh, of having that work effectively and of using those agroecological practices. I'm looking at one of your comments here, and I do believe that as we produce food, we have to do it in collaboration with nature, not struggling against her. So for me, I see this as an opportunity, and our challenge is to keep that in the forefront of our political decision makers, so that as things start to ease, as they rebuild the economy, we keep reminding them of how a good agricultural policy that supports a good health and nutrition policy is going to make their job easier.
Dr. Tami, please.
So with every disaster comes an opportunity. And I think with COVID-19, I think the first opportunity that comes to us is the opportunity of really overhauling our healthcare system. is very much inevitable. And we know about it, we talk about it. I think the second most important domain that comes to our mind is nutrition as well as agriculture. We have seen that food is available during the general holiday or lockdown, but we have also seen that it's not reaching the people who are in need. So this is an opportunity to tighten what we know and to improve our practice of reaching out to the poor in need. I think there are many lessons that we have to learn from this COVID-19. We have to remember that COVID-19 is not the end of the world. This will leave us tomorrow or in a year's time, but then definitely there will be other emergencies and disasters, maybe even more severe than COVID-19, that are going to hit us, and we need to be prepared for them. And we need to take lessons that we are learning from COVID-19.
Well, Robin, there is one question. I think you can address this one. You know, the livestock market, you know, when we talk about the livestock production, poultry production, and nowadays there are a lot of discussion about the wet market. You know, although whether it is a wildlife or it is a poultry or other. What do you think? Should we phasing out? Is it the solution or we need to think something else? What is your view?
I think it's going to be a discussion, local area by local area. Wet markets have served society for a very long time, and they've served them very well. Your fresh food is frequently your most nutritious. So your wet market will have some animals, it will have fruit and vegetables. So they remain essential. If we are not able to guarantee processing, if we are not able to guarantee rigid cold chains that are able to maintain the quality of perishable foods, it's going to be very difficult to phase out wet markets. The question is, how do you regulate wet markets? How do you provide the infrastructure and the training that ensures that the products that are sold there are safe and that the market itself is able to have hygienic practices? So just closing wet markets for me is not a solution. It's a much deeper and wider discussion than that. But I'd be interested to hear your opinion.
Ami, do you want to make any comment on it?
No, Dr. Nitesh, I think Dr. Elders has very nicely summarized it, and I agree that wet markets have served the populations all over the world for the last, thousands of years. And with one single go, we cannot get rid of it. Definitely, we have to improve how we are running the wet markets. And unless we cannot have a very good system of producing this processed food, we have to rely on these wet markets.
Okay, I think there is one comment. Maybe I don't know whether you will comment on or not. Priority of the agricultural research should be on biodiverse, small farming, household producing, safe and organic food. You know, what Robin, you mentioned in your some of the slides. I mean, with this so many people, so small land, is it really very strong advocacy we can make in Bangladesh context? What is your view?
I'll give you my view and then you can share your view. I think at this point in time, with the demographic, the population that we have and the distribution of people, with increasing numbers of people in urban areas, I think we do have to look at multiple production systems. I do believe that agroecological principles should be used, but I think we're going to have to look at urban agriculture. We're going to have to look at some more technological fixes, as well as ensuring that our utilization of aquatic resources is done efficiently. So I think there's a place for biodiverse smallholder farming, and I feel those that survive are going to attract some very good prices. If they can get their marketing right, there'll be premium prices paid for that product. But in order to get food that's accessible and of a price affordable by most, I think we're going to have a range of systems. The main thing is to make sure that those systems are safe and that it's agreed that the product that is offered is good for you now and good for you in a few years' time. So not just safe, but also nutritious.
Okay, can I comment on that, Nitishda?
Please, yes, yes, yes.
You have raised the issue of whether, agriculture, research, how important will that be? I think this is most important, and we are already reaping the fruits of good agricultural research in this country. Imagine what had happened just after liberation. A country with 7.5 crore population, and we had severe food insecurity. And now we have a population of about 16, 17 crore, 117 million, but we don't have that significant element of food insecurity. So how did we do that? That was possible only because of the results of good agricultural research. People, our agricultural scientists, they have come up with high yield varieties of other crops, and that's why we can feed all the millions of people. But we need more of that. We still have to import nutritious foods that are rich sources of protein, the pulses from places as far as Canada and Australia. We need to do research so that we can produce these in Bangladesh and in plenty. So this is the kind of agricultural research that we need. We also need research on, not GM food, but also other types of food that are biofortified. We are talking about rice that can give you more amounts of zinc, vitamin A. These are all in the pipeline, and I think we need that for the population to be fed in countries like Bangladesh.
I think we are about to end the one. There is one comment, which is also a good one. Opportunity to boost smart agriculture, leveraging technologies including e-learning, innovation, campaign on disease transmission, safety, visual aids for the training for farmer school. These are all positive side for the agriculture, and there is nothing to disagree with this thing. What do you think, panel?
Agreed.
Agree. Well, we agree. Now, the last question, Robin and Dr. Thami, that's what we asked to all our panelists. What do you think with the experience, the lesson that we learned from COVID-19, the One Health that we are using as a platform? What is the future of One Health? Is it going to be stronger? Is it going to be weaker? Or is it going to die off? What is your view as a One Health concept? To Robin first, and then I will go to Dr. Thami.
I think if we are to learn the lessons of COVID-19, and if we are interested in minimizing the likelihood of another pandemic that's similar, One Health has to be strengthened. It has to be a way of working, and at the government level, we have to find a way to operationalize One Health in that it's reflected in the way the ministries work, in the way funds are allocated. Having funds come down in silos also doesn't help. How do we find ways to get those silos to work together with the funding that enables everyone to do their job well? So once again, I see this as an opportunity, and I do believe that One Health will become the normal way of working as we move forward.
Do you see any sign of that in the meantime? No.
I think it's getting better. Absolutely, it is getting better. If you look at the way we're approaching antimicrobial resistance, where vets are talking to public health people, and now even the crop people who use antibiotics, everybody's talking about antimicrobial resistance. and they're talking at the same time and to each other. This for me is a very good sign.
Dr. Tahmid.
I think COVID-19 has placed you at the top of the world, One Health, okay? And I think it is happening in other parts of the world. In China, we are already seeing great strides. And in Bangladesh, although I'm not sure whether we are seeing a lot of it happening, but I'm sure it's going to come in. But it depends on a lot of you being the champion of One Health in this country, and you will have to move this forward. And I think we are going to assist you with whatever steps that you take. And, you know, I had a comment from Professor Shah Munir Hussain. I don't know whether he's listening now. He's the former Director General of Health Services and a professor of pathology and also my teacher. And he commented about aquaculture, horticulture, and poultry in particular. So, you know, with all these things, you know, One Health is very intricately involved. And we need to make sure that from now on, that whatever we do is very relevant. I can cite one example from the work that we are doing, which is Campylobacter. Okay, so this is an organism which is coming from poultry, but which is almost ubiquitous. You can find it everywhere. And this Campylobacter is now being associated with impairment of linear growth in children, childhood stunting. So you can see that an organism that is very common in the poultry industry causing a great harm to child health. So I think One World has indeed a great role to play. So this is the time for One World to take off in Bangladesh.
Thank you. I think with these things and congratulating to our all speakers. I'm sorry that Professor Hasanullah made a wonderful presentation with a very strong data, but we cannot have him because of some technical problem to answer some of very interesting, intriguing questions. But we will forward those questions to him so that he can really give them online. And also, Robin, you know, I know it is late night for you. You are attending this one. And Dr. Tahmid, I know you are a very busy man, but you have given a good time and also very strong voice in favor of the science, the nutrition, and of course, the food production and security. And our participants, I can see still there are a lot of participants listening to us, and we are very grateful that you have been attending continuously, and this shows that One Health is to survive. And with this word, I would like to thank all our participants and speakers for today's webinar. And with this thing, by the way, you know, I can see it is not only Bangladesh. I can see participants from even from Australia, from UK, from Italy. They have attended this webinar. Many thanks to all of them, and also from Middle East and some of South Asian countries. Thank you to all. And with these few words, I would like to conclude here. We have another webinar on next 3rd of July, and we hope that you will all attend. With this few words, I conclude our today's webinar. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Dr. Nurul.
Yes.
I'd like to test the video with you because, you know, it's very strange that...
Let me end the meeting because it's recorded. Okay.
Oh, sorry.